protection for our men and women of the armed forces serving throughout the world. In your name, amen. Okay, tonight we're going to start with communications. I think that's really spaced out here, so it takes me a moment to find a space. We have two communications tonight. The first is the presentation to thank those who participated in the October 26, 2013 Make a Difference Day. And boy, did it make a difference. It was fantastic. So by Julie Swantani, volunteer coordinator. This is always a special moment. We love this.
Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And I love the participation and the support that I always get from the Mayor and Council for this event. And I know our volunteers really appreciate it, too. So thank you. It's with great pleasure that I come to you tonight to talk and thank all the people that made a difference on October 26th in the Goodyear neighborhood. So I want to thank you for that. Hold on, where is the slideshow? Lainey, do I need a slideshow or the... there we go. Great. Thank you. This year we had 250 volunteers that gave over 850 hours of service on that day, and a little bit before in prepping. Total savings to the city of $19,000. This year's projects, we painted 2 homes in the city of Goodyear. We always partner with the Rock and Roll Paint-a-thon downtown, and we had 2 homes selected. We painted the Goodyear skate park, and that's a really big fence if you've never walked around that fence. It's very large. We also painted the Bullard Wash Park fence and north-south of Monte Vista. Painted 75 hydrants in Estrella, and distributed door hangers to 400 homes in historic Goodyear. I also, at this time, I would like to thank the Mayor and Council, again, for your participation. And I know a couple of you could make it, but those that could, we really appreciate it. I know our volunteers really appreciate it, and wanted to thank you for coming out. At this time, would love to see if I could get the Mayor and Council to come down here, and we're going to take photos as we're giving out the things, and then a group photo. So if you'd like to come down here and thank the groups, that'd be great. You participated that day, and I'd love to have you come down here and thank them at the same time. Evelyn Howell's going to come up, and we'll be handing out the certificates. The first ones, as you're coming down here, we said we had a bunch of projects, and if we could get everybody here. There were 3 Eagle Scout projects that we had this year. Which is great. 3 of them again, which was fantastic. And we love working with the Eagle Scout projects. We think they do a fantastic job. There's lots of planning on their part, and we're really happy to have their participation. Our first one that we would like to mention is Zach Rovard. Zach, can you come up? Yes. Yeah, where are we decided? I was thinking over here because it has a solid background over here. Yeah, Zach, I was thinking over here is probably the best place. Mayor Lord, I'm sorry. This way. Hey, you've been sitting probably for the last hour. You can thank me. I'm just getting everybody up, moving around. It's perfect. Okay, Zach had volunteers that came in. He did the Bullard Wash Park North Fence. This is the area, the fence that's behind Staples and TJ Maxx Home Store. So he did that, and he had 100 total volunteer hours for his project that he put together. A lot of these things are donated, that they get things for their project. Thank you, Zach. The next one that we'd like to have come up. Can we get Riley Hansen to come up? Yay. That's right. Give him a big round of applause there for Riley. Riley took on his project this year to, as we were talking, the skate park fence. they split it for 2 Eagle Scout projects. If you get a chance, I recommend that you go and walk around. I mean, it's a huge fencing area, and inside they have to do it's a little poles there, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. Riley himself had $1,000 worth of donations that he went out and got for his project. So thank you, Riley. He had 200 man hours that he collected himself personally. And we wanted to give a special thanks to Sherman Williams. If ever you want any paint, everybody go to Sherman Williams. They donated over $3,200 worth of materials for the 3 Scout projects. Thank you, Riley. The 3rd Scout, and I don't know if he's here, we didn't see him, but we'll tell you, it was Tyler Rapisardi. He did the other half of the skate park. He had 150 volunteer hours that were given on his project. We had 7 different churches and schools that participated in it, and this is the list, but we'll go through it in just a second. We had Palm Valley Church. If we could have the representative for Palm Valley Church that could come up. Palm Valley Church, give them a round of applause, big round of applause. Palm Valley Church has been participating 2 or 3 years, I believe. They take on the responsibilities of painting the homes, and the Palm Valley Church goes out that week prior and preps the home. They clean it, they power wash it, they scrape any old paint off of it. So that in itself is many man hours that they have to put in addition to that. So we really appreciate. Palm Valley has also been a major supporter and a big volunteer service for us and other projects that we have. So thank you to Palm Valley Church. We have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Do we have anyone here from the church? They've helped with 3 different scouts. They've helped. I think this was their 4th year of participating in the Make a Difference Day. We really want to thank them. They're major supporters of this, so thank you to them. Next we have Franklin Pierce University. I know we have someone here from there. Franklin Pierce did the other half of this of the fencing that by Monte Vista, south of Monte Vista. That's the one behind Staples. And with all of the students, they came out there and painted that day. I think they had 100 hours of service. And again, they are a return participant in our Make a Difference Day. Thank you to Franklin Pierce University. Do we have a representative here from Desert Edge High School? We want to thank Desert Edge. They came in small but mighty numbers, and we dispersed them working on different projects, and again, a repeat participant in our Make a Difference Day. Estrella Foothills High School, I know we have Julie DeBays here from there. Julie, doesn't that picture look good of her driving the bus on the left there? She got her students to come out from Estrella Foothills, and they painted 75 hydrants in the Estrella development where they go to school. And they take great pride in doing this. This is their 2nd year of painting fire hydrants out there. And her students gave over 100 hours of service for this project. Thank you, Julie, and Estrella Foothills High School. Our other schools that we had, high school is Millennium High School. Do we have anyone here from Millennium High School? Yes. Hey, good. The students from Millennium High School and some of the parents came out and assisted in several projects that we have. Again, different here. We do know that they worked on the skate park, so we want to thank them from Millennium High School and the efforts that the students dedicated to come out and help with us Make a Difference Day every year. Thank you to Millennium High School. Verrado High School. Do we have a representative from Verrado High School? Thank you to Verrado High School. Again, they came out and were very flexible. You know, we came up and said, oh, we need a little bit of help with some of these other projects, and they were flexible enough to go and help where needed, which we really appreciated. Again, the spirit and the support that we always get from Verrado High School is wonderful. Last year they did adopt a park, so they're a multifaceted group that helps with different things. So thank you to Verrado High School. We had two generous organizations that donated all of our snacks and our Gatorade drinks for this event, and we really are thankful to them. We have McLean Sunwest. Do we have Teresa Hatch here tonight? No. Well, McLean, this is their third year of always donating their snacks and water for us, so we really appreciate McLean Sunwest. And then we also have PepsiCo. I don't know if Jason's here, but I know Jeff is here. Jeff Radkowski, if Jeff would, or if Jason, one of the two. Jeff Radkowski. Jeff's with PepsiCo, so thank you, Jeff, for.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you.
Evelyn and I can't figure out how Jeff does everything. I mean, he's like, and not only that, but he emails us, you know, like, he's good. Thank you. Also, we have, I don't know if Jody's here from Papa John's. Well, I'd like to recognize Papa John's. They worked with us with the deal that, you know, we've got really good price on pizzas, and we had pizzas for all of our volunteers after they were finished, and we gave them a certificate for that. So thank you to Papa John's. There's a lot. This event could not happen without a lot of participation from Goodyear staff, and so here's a list of the different people that not only helped prepping and getting ready for all of these projects throughout the months that took planning for this, but also were there that day and were very instrumental in making this successful event. I want to thank PJ Miller, who took photos that day. Thank you, PJ, to volunteer. And the other volunteer here is Evelyn Howell. Kudos has to go to Evelyn. Evelyn really is a project manager for this Make a Difference Day. Evelyn is the one that contacts all the groups. She works with the Goodyear staff. We go to our engineering department. She puts the map together where all the projects are going to be. She works with communications to post those maps and volunteer waivers so that it's easy for them to find out the projects that they'd like to be participating in. Evelyn is the go-to person on this, and she really deserves a big round of applause for all of her work. And we thank, again, everyone for coming out and participating, and we look forward to next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judy.
All right, the second item is under communications, an update on the recent information technology department accomplishments and current initiatives. By Dan. We'll see you again, Dan. Welcome.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and
ITS
Council.
Director, sorry.
It's coming up on my one-year anniversary with the city, and it seemed appropriate to come to you tonight to give you an update on some of our most recent accomplishments as well as some projects that we're working on today, because a lot of what we work on in IT is usually behind the scenes and not something real visible to council. So hopefully this will give you better insight into what we're working on. As you know, we've recently made a decision to replace city BlackBerries with Windows phones. And we've had some very positive feedback from our users. We think that these devices will make our staff much more efficient in the field, and we're looking at other ways to use those devices, as you'll see in future slides here. Another accomplishment was promoting our internal collaboration website called SharePoint, and we've been able to add more groups and teams to this system. And this system promotes collaboration by creating simple, easy-to-use website where ideas can be shared, discussions can be held on a topic, content, documents, et cetera, can all be shared as a group. And we see this technology continuing to grow its footprint at the city. We've recently completed the development of the new HR performance appraisal system. This is a very large undertaking, something we're quite proud of. Prior to this system going live, all city staff have been evaluated on paper forms. So this will be the first time we're doing that electronically this month, as a matter of fact. So we're very excited about that. And then the last recent accomplishment is we upgraded our Lucidity application, which is used by Water and Streets, and that was in order to implement the mobility functionality as we're trying to support a mobile workforce in everything that we do. Shifting to current initiatives, we're in the process of writing an RFP for a mobile application that our citizens can use to engage with the city. And we anticipate that this app will provide things such as a centralized calendar of events, allow citizens to report problems like potholes, graffiti, submit ideas, provide feedback, get information on city services and facilities, and be flexible so that we can add to that in the future as our needs change. And then another mobile app that we're looking at is for staff. And the goal of this app is to reduce the number of paper forms that we use, specifically for field workers. So we want to create electronic versions of that form, put it on their devices that they have with them, and help them when they're out completing those forms. That will increase their productivity, but it will also increase the accuracy of their reports. So far, our testing looks very positive on that. Shifting to tablets, we have a number of initiatives exploring where we could get better usage using tablets within different areas of the city. One area would be for field workers, another for office workers, and then also looking at replacement devices for mayor and council. Ultimately, we believe that moving to the Windows tablets would make us more efficient and align better with other city technologies than the iPads do today, but we need to complete the testing and we need to validate that before we can move forward. Also, we heard loud and clear it can be confusing and challenging for council at times using the iPads with Dropbox and PDF Expert, especially when there's a large number of files. So as the clerk mentioned a few weeks back, we're working with her and her staff to come up with a better solution for you, and so we're hoping to have something to share with you soon. We are in the process of updating all of our administrative guidelines and making sure that they're current and relevant. To date, we've reviewed 28 of those documents, and we're just about finished with that exercise. One exciting development is the implementation of IT governance within the department. This is similar to the accreditation efforts taking place in the police department, but specific to IT. And so the goal here is to make sure that our processes and procedures are aligned with best practices and industry standards. This will be a multi-year effort to implement the complete framework, but we've already begun and we're already seeing value out of that. We're also in the process of applying encryption technology to all city-owned laptops. And this is to make sure that any data on them would be unusable if they fell into the wrong hands in the event they got lost or stolen. Kind of an insurance policy, but we think it's better to be safe than sorry. And then another big effort for us is to upgrade all city computers to Windows 7 and the latest version of Microsoft Office. This upgrade is necessary to keep compatible with new technologies that keep coming out, and we need to be on a supported version of the software from Microsoft. New website. Here's one that you've all expressed interest in seeing some improvements with, and we are marching ahead with that. We've signed an agreement with a new vendor, and we're working with their project team to build out the complete schedules, doing that now. We anticipate coming back to council soon to update you on our vendor, their recent projects and accomplishments, and then to discuss our strategy going forward. And then, as you know, earlier tonight we were here during the work session to discuss the ERP project and looking for next steps, guidance on that. This is another large-scale effort that we think will have a positive impact across all departments in the city. We're very excited, and I just want to thank you for your feedback this evening on that and for your support. We've been working on a pilot for video conferencing solution that is hosted in the cloud. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term, the cloud, but basically what that means is we have no infrastructure in our data center running those services. They basically are run over the internet in a secure way. This service could greatly improve the way that we conduct interviews with candidates, could reduce travel time for meetings, and could allow for training to be done without gathering everybody in one location. We'll be enhancing the wireless networking at the ballpark in the next few weeks by using surplus equipment in order to keep costs at a minimum. Wireless networking was problematic last spring training due to the number of users that we're trying to connect. The system just wasn't designed for that many users, and so we're confident that we'll be able to handle this year's demand once that project's complete. And then lastly, we're in the process of replacing all the city's firewalls and remote access systems. The current systems are outdated and in need of replacement. The new systems are next generation solutions that will greatly improve our security posture as well as support our mobility strategies going forward. And with that concludes my presentation. I just want to say thank you. I can appreciate your support and everything that you guys do to help us get these projects accomplished.
Thank you, Dan. That was a very complete briefing. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now is the time for citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda item. And I have one speaker card. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so I'd introduce Joseph Husband from the airport. Joe?
And good evening to you.
I didn't brief you on your time, but you're well aware
3
of
minutes.
that.
Yeah, I can hardly tell you my name in 3 minutes, but I'll work on it. Joe Husband, Phoenix Goodyear Airport Manager, 1658 South Litchfield Road. Wanted to spend a little time talking just some information and issues that are current at our airport. Haven't been before you in a while, so I wanted to keep you up to date. First, we've got our first new facility development in over 12 years. Last facilities we developed there were our terminal and maintenance building and some T-hangars, and that was right around 2000. But Luxair Jet Centers, our FBO, is in the process of developing a new facility that will serve all of their customers' needs and the needs of the airport and the transient traffic that comes through there. Those the site plan has been through review and approved, and I think they've got their permit package in right now for review. So that's pretty exciting for us. First new development in 15 years. We see things starting to turn the corner a little bit. Airline Training Center of Arizona, as you know, recently Oxford Aviation moved after their acquisition by CAE. They moved over to Falcon Field in their configuration of CAE Oxford. Airline Training Center of Arizona has completed some negotiations with new customers to come in and take that capacity up. And they've just recently completed a deal with CTC Aviation, which is also headquartered in the United Kingdom and is one of Oxford's direct competitors over there. So they'll be coming in starting right after the first of the year and moving up and eventually taking over that capacity that Oxford leaves behind. They've also sealed deals with KLM. KLM is here training some of their pilots for their system, as well as All Nippon Airlines, which will be here in about a year to come in and do some training here as well. So they're doing quite well. We're in a kind of a down cycle right now with regards to operations, but it's definitely on the rebound. Aero Turbines continuing to grow. You know, at one time, a few years ago, they were at about 50 employees. They're well over 200 right now and continuing to grow. You were, Madam Mayor, at the Frontier Airlines 100th Aircraft Celebration, so we thank you for coming out for that. But they are continuing to grow, and they're looking actually at possibly expanding on the airport. So we're having some discussions with them about that. Galaxy International also is continuing to grow. Joe Arizmenez from Galaxy just called me the other day. He says, man, everything seems to happen at once. So their business is growing along. And one of the most important things I want to tell you about tonight is we just put up a new sign on Hangar 18 facing out towards the runway and taxiway that says Phoenix Goodyear Airport and the field elevation of 971 feet above sea level. And this was of particular interest to a dear friend of all of ours, former council member Gary Gelser, great champion of the airport, asked me, would you please get that sign fixed? And of course, the wheels of municipal government spin so slow sometimes. It's taken us a while to do that, but that was completed last last week, and we'd like to maybe come back sometime and work with staff to talk about coming back and seeing you after the first of the year, maybe to join you at a council session and give you some more detailed information on where we are. But I just want to give you information. I also want to thank staff. Most of the time, we get excellent service from the staff. Great communication, great partnership. We want to thank you for that. So with that, I thank you all once again, Madam Mayor, members of council, and staff. Have a great day.
Thank you very much, Joe. And we know Gary's looking down from heaven and going, yes, at last, on the sign, because that was his goal, to get that done. So thank you so much in the name of Gary Gelser, right, guys? Yeah, okay. All right, now is the time for anybody that would like to speak on a non-agenda item, and we just finished that, but I didn't ask if there was anybody in the audience that wanted to speak on a non-agenda item. So I guess, Joe, you have the floor tonight. All right, so we're going to go to the consent agenda. Will the city clerk please read the consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.3 by title only, please?
Item 6.1, approve draft minutes from a regular meeting held on November 18th, 2013. Item 6.2, approve the final plat for the Beck property subdividing 232 acres into 6 industrial lots and 1 tract located on the south side of Van Buren Street at 143rd Avenue and extending south to Yuma Road within the I-1 Light Industrial Park zoning district, subject to the stipulations set forth in the general notes of the final plat and additional stipulations. Item 6.3, approve the final plat for Pebble Creek Phase 2, Unit 43B, subdividing 25.21 acres into 124 lots and 12 tracts located at the southwest corner of Indian School Road and Cereville Avenue within the Pebble Creek Phase 2 planned area development, subject to the stipulations set forth in the general notes of the final plat and additional stipulations.
Thank you very much. We do have one speaker card from the public, and it's Joe Husband that wants to speak on the 6.2. Please come forward.
Been here before.
I know.
Madam Mayor,
I could
members
have
of
had
council.
you stay up there if I knew it was going to be such a quick trip. But
Well, you never know. Joe Husband, Phoenix Goodyear Airport Manager, 1658 South Litchfield Road. Madam Mayor, members of council and staff, we are, generally speaking, very supportive of the final plat for the Beck property, which is directly north of the airport, running from Yuma Road up to Van Buren. But this area is one that's of particular concern for us because the development on that parcel 6, which is the furthest south right along Yuma Road and just north of the airport, is within our runway protection zone. And so there are, concerns for incompatible uses. Any incompatible uses that are developed on that site can certainly have a detrimental effect on the airport and the airspace that surrounds it. And so we just wanted to come once again, as we did during the preliminary plat approval, and let you know that this is an area that we're very concerned about, watching very closely. We have no reason to believe that the developers and the potential future owners will not work well and closely with the airport, but we just continue to come forth and let you know that this is an area of concern. We definitely want to show our appreciation for planning staff, particularly Joe Schmitz and Karen Craver. They've been very good in keeping the communication open and letting us know what's going on. And we appreciate also the assurances and stipulations that you have placed on this final plat approval to protect the airport, for now, for our current development, as well as for future generations. So once again, I just reiterate that particularly parcel 6, which is under the runway protection zone and in the aircraft approach surface, is one that's of particular interest and of concern how it continues to develop. So with that, I leave you and thank you.
thank you very much, Mr. Husband. Does anyone from the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Is this a question, Councilman
It's a
Stipp?
question.
All right. Could we address a question to it? What is your question?
Questions on 6.2.
Is there anybody that can come? Well, we
yeah.
need staff up here to address that. Thank you, Joe. Joe Schmidt's coming to the microphone.
Joe, while I realize that we've put some stipulations in place regarding the development of this property, I am concerned about, I share the airport's concern, actually. What protection do we have in the future regarding parcel 6 that would either allow it to come back before council, allow it to go through some public how are we going to be assured, this, other than someone's word and a handshake, that we're going to do all we can to protect the airport?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, we have included stipulations and then notes on the plat disclosing the fact that the runway protection zone does affect Lot 6 and that the approach slope surface affects several of the lots and that the noise contour affects several of the lots. We do not have an airport height ordinance on the books that would allow us to restrict the actual height of buildings in that vicinity. So the best we could do at this point is to require disclosure, and also because the property has already got entitlement. It was entitled back in the 80s. So because of the restrictions of Prop 207, we can't impose any kind of conditions or stipulations on that might potentially adversely affect the property, but we have encouraged dialogue between the property owner and the airport to consider pursuing navigation easements or some type of acquisition, which would be probably the only way to wholly ensure that nothing will happen there.
Okay, and then I guess that opens a second question then, which is, I believe that this takes care of all of the development north of the airport. Is that correct? If we approve this plat tonight, everything has been final platted north of the airport. Is that?
That would be correct.
That would be in that flight path consideration. So I guess getting to the end of it, there would not be a need for us to go forward with in the future, an ordinance to limit height or restrict height in the vicinity of the airport. They'd kind of be a moot point at this point, wouldn't it?
Well, the height is regulated by the zoning ordinances, and generally speaking, the height is limited to, depending on the district. In the I-1 district, it's 40 feet.
Mm-hmm.
In the I-2 district, it's 50 feet. In the C2 district, it's 56 feet. And there are various zones that fall within the approach path of the runway. However, once you get a certain distance from the runway, the approach slope goes up and it becomes less of a potential hazard. So the best way to, I guess, to answer this is that since all of the property is zoned in one shape or form and already has a height restriction, we really would only have to worry about it if somebody proposed a height that exceeded the standard district that they had. If they change it to another district, which would allow a higher height. But we would have control over that during the rezoning process.
Okay, I think perhaps just that now gets directed to the manager, that can get just a little heads up, on what we have on the departure side as well as on the arrival side of the airport, and what options we have or need to consider in the future. Does that make sense? What I'm asking anyway.
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember Skip. I think I'm on that. It does, yes.
Okay, thanks. I'm done.
Mayor?
Yes. Councilman Loretano.
I guess, Joe, I just want to follow up a little bit. That it sounds like it's parcel 6 is the one that is of most concern.
That's correct.
What is the height currently zoned for on that? And is the current zone height, could that be a problem?
We got Elmo.
And Joe, while you're showing that, we've received a permission from Luke Air Force Base, is that correct, on any part of this area being built on? Is that correct?
Mayor, I don't recall if we got direct correspondence from Luke on this. This is actually outside the
Because it's outside of it.
outside
Okay,
the
all right.
box, so to speak. But this is depicts the runway protection zone for the Phoenix Goodyear Airport, and so yes, it Lot 6 extends in there somewhere, so this is primarily limited to Lot 6. The maximum height at that location would be 40 feet under the current zoning. And then this gives you some indication about how the approach slope goes up from there.
And is it the 40 feet that's of concern to the airport, or is that, I'm seeing kind of an iffy.
Well, you have two things going on at the same time. You have the approach slope, and then you have the runway protection zone. The federal aviation regulations recommend that the runway protection zone be very limited in terms of what type of activity or buildings are constructed there. So from an airport perspective, they would prefer to see the runway protection zone not used at all. Of course, we have Yuma Road that runs right through it as well. And as far as I know, we have no plans of moving Yuma Road or discontinuing its presence. And then the second thing is the slope approach, and that is what is depicted by the height numbers. So you have kind of two things, the approach slope and the runway protection zone.
I guess that still doesn't really answer my question. I understand Yuma Road, and I guess a static building is a little different than a car driving through, because I-10, is right by the airport, and there's airports with roads. But is the 40 feet a concern for the airport, since there are some rather large aircraft going in and out of there?
Mayor, Lord, Councilmember Loretano, it's not so much the height for the runway protection zone as it is just the area that is under the trapezoid or triangular shaped piece.
So if someone built a 40-foot building there, it wouldn't be a problem for the airport. We wouldn't have problems there.
I would let the airport speak for themselves, but
could we hear from that?
I think they would
I guess
prefer not to have a building in that
that's what he was
location.
stating when Mr. Husband came before us, that they do have a concern of that. But again, tell us the prop again.
Prop 207.
Prop 207, they sort of controlled that for us. So,
But that Prop 207 doesn't keep the applicant from agreeing, right? They could agree to that?
There's nothing to keep the applicant from voluntarily agreeing. That's correct. It's just would infringe on our ability to require it.
Mayor, is the applicant here?
pardon me?
Is the applicant here?
I think the applicant in the room. Shall we? Do you want to bring the applicant down?
Fred Stiles.
Now, shouldn't I have a motion before we do all of this? Or I mean, we pulled it off the consent agenda for.
I would probably agree. I'd probably go and finish up my consent agenda. This is kind of pulled at this point, then come back with your motion discussion.
Yeah, so they can put it back to discussion after so let's do this. I'm very uncomfortable. This conversation extended far beyond what I had anticipated by the first question. So could I have a motion, please, and a second?
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve consent agenda items 6.1 and 6.3 as read.
Second.
I heard a motion from Councilman Stipp and a second from Vice Mayor Pizzillo. Open for council discussion now, okay? We're going to finish this here because I asked a question. We have it hanging out here. So now the question on the table is from Councilman Loretano.
Madam Mayor,
We can vote on this.
We can vote on it?
you have a motion on your consent items except for this one. So
Okay.
you're handling the other two consent items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll get back to the
Okay,
6.2.
all right. So roll call vote, please.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Holman?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
All right, so we're all finished with this. Okay. But I'm going to ask, because it's on the same subject, I have two council people that were, I'm not sure their questions were answered. I'm not sure Councilman Loretano's questions were asked. So I just asked that somehow staff follow up with where we left this. Is that correct? I'm seeing nodding
Yeah,
of head. There was some uncomfortable moments here on this. So I just want to make sure that they're fully briefed after this.
Well, are we going to discuss 6.2?
Madam Mayor, are you going back to the point where you want a presentation?
Well, I don't know. At this point, we voted.
We handled the
Okay.
consent, now we're back to item 6.2.
Yes.
Typically, we'd have a presentation, we've already kind of had that. So
Right.
in order to discuss, you should have a motion and a second, then it's open to council discussion.
Okay. So,
Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve item 6.2.
I'll second it.
okay.
Now council discussion.
So a motion was made by Councilman Stiff and a second from Councilman Basillo on 6.2, open for discussion.
There we go.
Yes,
Okay.
Mayor.
Who's first?
Can I just finish up real quick?
Councilman Loretano.
I guess I don't feel like I'm getting the question answered. Maybe I'm not asking it right. I just feel like we're talking around it. My question is, if there's a 40-foot building there, I understand about the proposition and everything and the requirements, but if that could cause detriment to the airport, then is that something that the applicant could go back and we could discuss with them if they'd be willing to work with us on that? Because I think what Councilman Stipp said about just a handshake, that doesn't really give me a lot of confidence, honestly, because it may be a while till something's built there, and then it's like, oh, well, they kind of agreed, but didn't really, they'd work with us. I don't feel comfortable with that.
You mean you're not comfortable with they're going to stop at 40, or you're not?
Well,
at
it
40?
sounds like, just from looking at Mr. Husband, that 40 is just not necessarily a good thing. Is 40 a problem or not? I guess that's is yes or no, because if they build 40 feet, are we going to have a problem there that we can't fix?
Mayor Lord, Councilman Loretano, I certainly wasn't trying to avoid answering your
No,
question.
I just wasn't asking it well, I don't think.
It's a little complicated, and as I said before, there are two different things. There's the runway protection zone, which is basically this trapezoidal shape on the ground, which is smaller than this, and then this is the approach slope. And a building could be constructed that's up to 40 feet in here, which would penetrate that, and potentially be problematic for the airport. Now, to the extent of what problems it would cause, I would defer to Mr. Husband to describe those, or if he wishes.
I guess that's what I'd like to know. What is is it a problem? I don't know.
Okay, he's behind you, Joe.
Before you answer, let me just throw this question in right on top of that, because it's, I think, exactly the same thing. With this picture you have up right now, if a 40-foot building was built where it says 30 feet, that's, I think, the question. If we build it on that corner at 40 feet in that 30-foot line, is that a problem?
Yeah.
Yes. So as Joe mentioned, the approach surface is what dictates the height. So if something penetrates the 30 feet area, if something is taller than 30 feet where it says 30 feet, 35, 40, et cetera, then we would have no choice but to have to modify the runway. And we would have to move it further south, or, basically lose usable runway space because of the airspace restrictions. But following up also on what Joe said, Mr. Schmitz, is that the runway protection zone, which is this area right here, there are uses that are the FAA does not want to have within that area, and that's places of assembly. It used to be they've changed their rules recently where there's almost nothing that they want in that central portion of the runway protection zone. So that's where there's also, and here again, if something is put in there, then we would have no choice but to have to make adjustments to the airfield. Now, if you can imagine not only the expense of that, but also potentially losing runway length, you're limiting your ability to operate the airport. So, I mean, this, as I said, is they have placed stipulations in the final plat where it indicates that a building permit would not be issued until they go through the 7460 process with the FAA, which is basically an analysis of what's proposed for construction, and then the FAA determines whether it's a hazard or not a hazard. So now we have no enforcement ability. The FAA has no enforcement ability with that, and they rely upon zoning and municipal approvals and things like that. We do have height zoning ordinances within the city of Phoenix around both of the other two airports that we operate that do restrict the height and use of things that are adjacent to the airfield. I realize we don't have that here. So, Madam Mayor and and Councilmember Stipp and members of the council, I hope I've adequately answered your question.
But at the time, I have a question, because at the time they come before us with the type of building that's going to be constructed on that, at that point, we can say that doesn't fall within the guidelines and still be within the jurisdiction of Prop 207? I'm looking over at you. Legal?
There are probably some options, Mayor. You're getting to the point where you're asking me some questions that really involve legal advice. I have some thoughts. If you would like to adjourn into executive session, I'll share those thoughts with you. We can certainly do that right now.
Well, I do have a question, which actually,
Joanne Osborne?
thank you, on the heels of George's, is that, the mayor's, I recall, and I do not know where it fits within the time frame of Prop 207, but we had the airport master plan, and I believe that, did we not adopt that as an ordinance with around the area? I just don't know which came first, quite frankly, and how that comes into play for this.
Well, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Osborne, some of the interplay is going to be what is the underlying zoning and when was that zoning put into place, on what controls. So there are some potential legal issues there. And this is a plat you're looking at this evening, not the underlying zoning, which gives the entitlement. So this is, the action you have this evening really involves the subdivision of the land and where are you drawing the lot lines, more so than what is the use that's allowed on the land, if that makes sense.
And the use become before us later. So
Well,
that's
the
why I
use-
say we have the opportunity to I think, make decisions within legally the Prop 207, and then at that time, when it comes before us, we probably have more of a hammer than we would at this point. Is that correct?
Presuming you're going to see this item again, because you have underlying zoning on this item. You're approving the final plat this evening, so there may be some circumstances, Joe, that it may come back to council, but not generally. It could be some administrative reviews.
All right, is somebody, yes?
Mayor, I'd like to make a
Step-
motion. We go into executive session to get advice from council.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Councilmember Homan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo,
Aye.
Mayor Lord,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
All right, we're going to adjourn for special meeting, exec meeting. Okay, I'm going to reconvene the meeting. And now it's, I think we're ready for roll call vote. They're looking at me like I'm supposed to do something else.
Well, do you have any further discussion, or you can certainly call the vote?
No, any further discussion?
You have a motion.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Loretano,
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell,
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp,
Aye.
Councilmember Homan,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne,
Aye.
Mayor Lord,
Aye.
passes 7-0.
All right, thank you very much. All right, let's go on to the business. And before we begin the 7.1, which I believe, Councilman Osborne, you have to recuse yourself.
Yes, Mayor, and council and the public, I'd like to recuse myself from this vote due to negotiations I've had with Maastricht.
All right, thank you. We'll notify you when you come back in. The first item on the business is to conduct a public hearing to consider the approval of a use permit to allow outdoor display and storage of merchandise for sale at the proposed Cal Ranch stores at 2075 North Creek Parkway. All right. Open for public hearing. Steve Carecci to present. No, I guess not. All right. Joe Schmidt.
I can't read it from here.
It says page display. It says Zoom.
I need it bigger.
There we go. Now we got it. Sorry. Mayor and Council, good evening.
Good evening.
As you noted, this is a request for a use permit to allow outside display and storage of merchandise for sale at a proposed Cal Ranch store at 2075 North Pebble Creek Parkway within the market at Estrella Falls Commercial Center, which is located in a mixed-use district of the Goodyear Planned Regional Center Planned Area Development. As established within that PAD, outdoor retail sales is a permitted use, while outdoor storage is a use requiring a use permit, and that's why this application's been filed. You can see that the property affected is at the southeast corner of Mountain Vista and Pebble Creek Parkway in the area outlined in red here. To the south, you have the existing market at Estrella Falls with commercial development and vacant pads reserved for additional commercial development. To the west is a commercial site and a park area. To the northwest is a vacant multifamily lot. And to the north are vacant parcels for mixed use and commercial development, as well as the Bullard Wash and like zoning to the east. The applicant is requesting the use permit to allow outside display and storage of merchandise for sale. It would take place in conjunction with a proposed Cal Ranch store, which would occupy the space that's currently occupied by Bashas'. The Cal Ranch store is considered a retail use and is permitted within the development. However, the outdoor storage requires the approval of the use permit. There are two areas proposed for outdoor storage, one in the parking lot, which is approximately 6,780 square feet, would be a fenced enclosure, and will contain equipment for ranching purposes and similar items displayed for sale. Items within the storage area would not exceed the height of the fence. The second outdoor storage area is in the back, and it's approximately 4,628 square feet and would contain home and garden equipment and supplies, fencing, posts, and panels. The larger materials within this area, such as fence posts and panels, could exceed the height of the surrounding fence by as much as 5 feet. The applicant had originally proposed an area immediately in front of the store, but has since withdrawn the request for that area. That's a depiction of the area in the parking lot, and then this is the area behind the store. The applicant has indicated that the area for outside storage in the parking lot would be enclosed by a 7-foot-high fence with 5 feet of wrought iron on top of a 2-foot-tall knee wall with masonry columns at intervals of about 35 feet. The fence will be painted black. The masonry knee wall and columns will utilize block approved for the development, and the fence would be covered with tan or black fabric. The storage area at the rear of the building will have a similar fenced enclosure except without the knee wall. And that's a little bit larger version of the fenced enclosure. This is the one with the knee wall, and then the other one is without it and has columns just at the corners.
Page 65.
The storage area in the front of the store will require removal of about 32 parking spaces. However, there's approximately 1,756 spaces provided in this commercial center, approximately 186 of which are located immediately in front of the proposed Cal Ranch store, and the amount of parking provided exceeds the amount required for the overall center in the proposed store by about 600 spaces. Mm-hmm. Additionally, there's a cross-access agreement that can be used allows shared parking with the other tenants within the center. The section of the zoning ordinance dealing with use permits requires the council must determine that the proposed use permit meets two findings. First, that the use will not be materially detrimental to persons residing or working in the vicinity or adjacent to the property, neighborhood, or public welfare. and secondly, that the proposed use is reasonably compatible with uses permitted in the surrounding area. Staff has determined the request generally meets the required findings for the use permit, particularly with the additional screening and architectural treatment that the applicant has agreed to provide. As this went through the process, a citizen review notice was sent out to these adjoining properties within 500 feet of the property and nearby HOAs. At that time, staff received no comment. The Planning and Zoning Commission held a public hearing on October 16th, for which a similar notice was provided. No one from the public spoke on this item at the commission meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission had recommended approval of the use permit by unanimous vote, subject to revised stipulations that were recommended by staff and agreed to by the applicant. The council obtained additional information on this request at the December 2nd work session. As I mentioned previously, during the presentation, it was noted that the use permit was being modified to eliminate the outside display and storage area immediately in front of the store. It was also noted that some of the materials displayed at the rear of the store may extend above the fence by as much as 5 feet. The stipulations that you have in your agenda support material have been revised to reflect these changes, as well as an additional stipulation to clearly require maintenance of the fabric screen. In conclusion, it's the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff that the request be considered for approval, subject to the 8 stipulations that are noted in your agenda support material. That concludes my presentation. The applicant is present and prepared to make a presentation if the council so desires as well.
Thank you very much. Now is the time for those that would like to speak on this agenda item during this public meeting. So we have several of you, so I'll start out with A. Brunelli. Now, before you start, I just want to clarify this on this. Does he have 3 minutes, or is he? All right.
It's 3 minutes.
Sorry, I should have told you as you were coming up that you have 3 minutes. I'm sure they'll be very good 3 minutes. So the yellow light and the buzzer will let you know you have 30 seconds left. And as you begin to speak, if you please identify yourself and your address. And during this period of time, we're somewhat subject to, we will not be responding to you. And so that will be done later at the time we'll have the discussion period. So the floor is yours, Mr. Brunelli.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. My name is Albert Brunelli. I'm a resident of 16084 West Ashland Avenue in Goodyear, and an area very close to the proposed site for the cow ranch. I oppose it. I oppose it because of the aesthetics and what would be, in my view, a detrimental view of the community caused by a storage area to accommodate materials that obviously aren't very attractive, otherwise they wouldn't be concealed. So I don't think it's in the best interest of everybody that is living in the area to have something like that put upon us, and I object. So that's my entire statement.
Thank you. Thank you for coming before us. The next speaker is Christy McCarthy.
Hello, my name's Christy McCarthy. I live at 16085 West Vernon Avenue. I live in the Portales neighborhood, directly adjacent to where the existing Bashas' is, which would be the proposed site for this store. And I am concerned about the effect of the outside use, or the size and scope of the storage and how it's concealed. I'm really concerned about how it's going to affect my home's property values and the property values in the area. And I'd really like the council to consider that. Also, notice, I never received a notice about planning and zoning, and I think I live pretty close to that area, so I'm just kind of wondering about that, because certainly I would have presented myself much earlier in this process. in opposition to it. My understanding is that outside we're talking about farming equipment and water tanks and things of sort. And I'm wondering if there's going to be hay strewn across the parking lot, and I'm just kind of really wondering what we're looking at here. And, the city has done a lovely job in bringing in these, this upscale, nice, it's a lovely community, and I think it's just going to be detrimental to property values. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. The next one on the market is Mark Pelletier. Mark?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mark Pelletier, 15742 West Fairmount in Goodyear. It's indeed unfortunate that Bash's is closed. I know there's been a lot of concern about that, but that really isn't the issue here. Unfortunately, they've closed twice now. Going forward, I think it's good that we are getting a tenant in the store. We have enough vacant properties, business and otherwise, so I think it's great that we're getting someone in here. Hopefully a specialty store such as Cal Ranch will draw from a larger area. Any grocery store, no matter how good they are, is only going to draw from half the distance to their next door. The issue of the back lot storage area in my mind is a non-issue. I've driven back there, and the existing landscaping on the property itself, plus the Bullard Wash landscaping, seems more than enough to screen it. I tried to look and see where houses were visible from there, and they're already up all the way up on, I don't think it's Virginia there. That road changes its name so many times. And the houses there that I could see in the far distance backed on that street and had their own screening. The front lot, I admit, is not an ideal situation, but and I was pleased to see that a couple of the things were changed. One, using the sidewalk area, which I think would have been a mistake, and the removal of the city's recommendation to cover the area. I still think, quite frankly, that putting the fence that the developer wants to put there, the retailer wants to put there, is sufficient, and I'm concerned that the meshing that we've asked for there will still make it look like a wall. Think about what you look at behind or in a yard through a picket fence versus a solid fence. And the comment was also made that there's maintenance issues with the mesh itself. So I'd prefer that not to be there. I think the area where in the parking lot where they intend to put it is screened from Pebble Creek Parkway by the Chase Bank and by the parking in that area of the lot, and to a lesser degree by the strip building there where Foot and Hand is and some others. And the area itself is also depressed relative to Pebble Creek Parkway. So I don't think there's a terrible aesthetics issue from the west. I don't know what's going to happen immediately across Monte Vista from that, but my understanding is that would likely to be commercial. So I think it's worth accepting to get these folks in here, and much preferable to something like we have at Lowe's, where you've got material on the sidewalk and out into the street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pelletier. The next speaker is Ronald Krates.
Good evening. Ronald Krates, 15160 West Coolidge Street in Goodyear. First of all, happy holidays. As a former superintendent of schools, I was really pleased to see so many students being recognized tonight. Thank you. And also in that regards, I'm concerned about a public hazard, a safety hazard for students and other people in that area, with fencing, potential equipment in that area, kids going over the fence, okay, kids getting hurt, etc. So I'm really opposed to that under that auspices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Krates. And the last one I have, last paper that I have is Pat Brennan.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Brennan. I live at 2290 North 159th Drive in Goodyear. I'm in the T.W. Lewis community across the street. I'm not opposed to a store moving in to replace Bash's'. I'm not happy that Bash's' is leaving, but this is a community grocery store that supports a growing community. One of the reasons that we bought where we did, it was convenient, it's close, and they serve the local community. Bash's is a community store. Well, now it's, would you like this in your backyard? Because I don't want it in my front yard. This is a farm store. I grew up in the farm country. I know exactly what it is they're going to sell. It's a much larger scale Ace Hardware. Where Ace is located is not in my front yard. It's not in a residential area. They're in a they're in a strip area where it's purely commercial. Nobody else is looking at it. When I leave my house, I don't have to look at it. Look at it from the perspective of the other developers who want to sell the remaining plots within those subdivisions. We had a community grocery store. They've opted to leave. Do you want to drive by there to try and sell your homes and look at farm implements, hay, whatever it is they want to put out there? It's not appealing. It's not something I want to look at. And then one of the comments was made that notices were sent out to HOAs. Myself and Al are actually on the HOA committee for our community. We received nothing. So I'm wondering who was notified, when they were notified, and here we are at the holiday season with people traveling, people not in the area. I'm sure the residents of Pebble Creek, if they were well aware of what was going on, would be very loud and boisterous. So I'm wondering if it is not right to possibly delay the approval until it is clearly, the message is clearly conveyed what the use is and what the impact of the community is. I think right now we're hurrying something through to appease a landlord. I do commercial real estate for a living for a major corporation. Nothing is done to appease a landlord or to appease a tenant. If it's the wrong thing to do for the community, we need to set time aside to accommodate the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Now, was there anybody else that's in the audience that didn't fill out a card that would like to come up and speak? Yes, you can come up. Yes. Ed, Mr. Bull.
Thank you, Mayor. Ed Bull, 702 East Osborne. As you know from your work session a week ago, we represent the underlying shopping center owner and have been asked to speak as well on behalf of Cal Ranch this evening. I will not, unless you want me to, repeat everything that was said here a week ago during your work session where there was a variety of information exchanged back and forth, and certainly have a complete staff report both in writing and Joe's presentation. But I would, if I can figure out how to turn on the PowerPoint.
Would someone please help with this?
It's up.
Joe?
It's up.
It's on. Something's on.
Okay.
All right.
How do I get back? How do I get to the very beginning of this?
We're seeing it on our screen, but it's not back here.
It's on this one.
Oh, is it that one? Oh, okay. Okay.
Oops, no, you went too far. The left-hand side, I need to get to number 1.
Are we adjusting the timing on this for the technical problem we're having here? No, okay. No, he has more than 3 minutes.
There we go. Somebody took it.
Okay. If I may, Mayor, I will move fairly quickly through some PowerPoint slides as an overview, and with apologies for some of it being a duplication of what Joe already reviewed with you. Importantly, because part of what needs to be emphasized and reemphasized here this evening, I believe, is that this is not a rezoning. The use, as you know from your staff report, and as Joe indicated, the use is permitted. What we're really talking about is whether or not certain goods can be displayed and then stored outdoors and effectively stored after hours because the sales are permitted. Be that as it may, it's also important, I think, aesthetically to emphasize that the store exterior, the skin itself, is not changing except to change out signs from Bash's to Cal Ranch. We think that's important because it's a part of the overall shopping center. It's a large shopping center. This is simply a component of it and part of what is a larger mixed-use area.
Excuse me a moment. Can you hear in the back? Can everybody hear the? Is it loud enough? Okay.
Okay. Cal Ranch, as you know from your materials and the discussion last week, yes, their tagline is a ranch store and a home store and so much more. I've been there. I think it's a fascinating store for someone like me who likes things that you may get in a Ace Hardware store, or things you may get in a Cabela's, or things you may get in some other stores, including tack and other kinds of things like that as well. We have a lot of people in Goodyear and the surrounding area who love and live the Western lifestyle. Not all of us can live on ranches or ranchettes, but nonetheless we like our boots and we like our shirts and we like our coats and other kinds of things like that, which is very much a part of what can be purchased in a store like Cal Ranch. As we look at some of the aspects, it by no stretch is just panels and other kinds of things. About a third of the store is apparel and footwear. Then there's hunting and fishing and camping and so on and so forth, hardware, toys. I think Sherry last week described it as being kind of a hybrid between a Cabela's and a Ace Hardware store and some other things as well. Inside the store, marketing is like most other kinds of retail store. Lots of different goods, lots of different things to choose from. And we can go on in as much detail as you want about some of the interior space. Outside, this is simply the same exhibit as Joe had up here earlier, with what I'll call the parking lot area and then the rear area. With respect to the parking lot area, as the last speaker touched on and as we talked about at some length when we were here a week ago, and as Joe touched on as well, as we're looking at this front parking lot, before you even get into the columns and the wrought iron fencing and the screening, presuming that that's what the council wants, the site, as was pointed out previously, is somewhat depressed in the context of both Pebble Creek Parkway and Monte Vista as well. Both of those streets are lined with landscaping. The parking lot has landscaping islands in it. The outdoor display area itself will have the fencing around it, the screening that I can show you if you would like. Has already been described. The sizes are such that they work well, don't interfere with parking. We have close to 600 more parking spaces than the code calls for. As we look at the rear area, again, as was discussed at some length a week ago and touched on tonight, the rear area is screened by, I believe it's about 500 feet of distance to Monte Vista. We have the landscaping along Bullard. We have screen walls behind the store, all of which leads down to just a relatively small portion of this rear area is even visible from Monte Vista itself. This slide shows the park, which, as you know, is depressed. It shows a little yellow line with red dots on each end. That's showing a perspective that ties in then to here, where the dashed line represents a theoretical view that you cannot see this outdoor display area from Monte Vista along that dashed line. Along the solid line, theoretically, you could see it if you were driving along Monte Vista at westbound and weren't concerned with the median or the bridge or the 500 feet and the landscaping and screening around the truck dock area and so on and so forth. So it's something that, unless you want us to elaborate on, it's an area that we do not believe this rear area is meaningfully visible in any way, shape, or form.
Ed, can you go back that one slide?
Go back to where the arrow is. Is that what you want?
This slide?
Yeah,
Yes.
as long as you've got it up. The dotted line touches a solid black line, which right below says 150 feet. That solid black line, that's the dock wall. Is that correct?
I can't
See where the dotted line touches a black line?
Yes, that is the dock.
That's the dock
that's
wall.
The dock wall.
So it is further screening that outdoor sales area from that roadway.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Kind of. This is touchy. You can see the apron going down into the dock, and on the eastern side of that apron going down into the dock is that relatively tall screen wall that screens the truck dock servicing what's currently the Bash's store.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
I think this is where we left off. Looking at that red arrow, this is showing the location that solid red line was pointing to. Again, about 500 feet away from the street, through the park, through landscaping, past the screen wall, and so on and so forth. The front sales area we've talked about in terms of its location, how we can still circulate around it, still have more than code required parking. As we talk about that front sales area, and this is, with apologies, duplication for much of what Joe had already indicated earlier, but the front area, in fact, both areas will have 7-foot tall fencing around them. The front one will have a knee wall with wrought iron on top. We talked about mesh screening and masonry columns. The masonry, and we have examples of masonry column material in here tonight if you want. I have a small sample of screening tonight, which Cal Ranch has used in other applications, and it works well. This sample happens to be black. It was suggested by some when we were here a week ago that tan may be more consistent with the color of the store. Someone else suggested black would be more consistent with asphalt. I don't know what the right answer is. We'll live with either. Anticipating it may be a tan color that would be preferred by staff and the council. The tan color is probably as close as anything would be the tan that's on your expandable, your doors that can go across and split this room in half. Would be a fair representation of the tan color, which if we roll back to the front of the store would be consistent with some of the primary colors on the front of the store. This drawing of the front area shows the columns, the knee wall, and the wrought iron doesn't necessarily show screening on it. If we looked at this is kind of a computer-imposed screening taken on an angle, very difficult to see anything through it. We think it's important that you can see through this. Important for a variety of reasons to have some visibility through it, but in and out, but also to provide the screening that we were asked to provide. This circles back again to kind of where we started with the front of the store, that earth tone color palette. It's based upon that palette that we had presumed that the tan screening is probably more in tune with what the council would prefer, but again, emphasizing that this use is a permitted use inside and outside of the store as far as sales are concerned. It's something that through the use permit processes, we agree completely with staff's findings, with staff's recommendation, and with the Planning Commission's unanimous recommendation, and that is this use, focused on this use permit in this setting, is not materially detrimental to neighboring persons or properties, and it's something that we believe is a very good use, a use that will be enjoyed by a variety of shoppers in the area, and is a use that is significantly removed, and I don't know if I can get this on Elmo to come up or not, but the little pink highlighting represents the existing store. So I asked that my office scale off about how far it is to the nearest existing residential to the west, to the kind of the northwest, and to the north. And in each of those situations, it's well over a quarter of a mile away. And as you know, we have existing pads along Pebble Creek Parkway, landscaping all over the place, existing retail in other locations, more retail to come. So this is very much a retail area. It is very much a commercial and mixed-use area, and it's something that, at least from our perspective, is not in any existing homeowner's front yard any more than a commercial pad or the store itself is. So We, of course, will be happy to go into additional details, Mayor, if you and the council want, or if you have questions, we will do our best to answer them, and that there are representatives here. In fact, Bill Bunker from Cal Ranch, who's the Vice President of Store Operations, is here. Rob Bassett from Macerich, who you know, is here. Also, Ken Stewart, who's a contractor who works on various construction-related things, is here. So my hope that we could answer most questions that the council may have. We very much believe that like staff and the commission did, that the use permit tests are satisfied. We know that this will be a good component in this center. We believe that staff, through the 8 updated stipulations that's in your report, all of which are acceptable to us, go even further, maybe further than necessary, to assure compatibility, but agreeing with those stipulations is a part of the package of concessions that Cal Ranch and Macerich felt was important, working hand in glove with your staff and your council to come forward with something that we believe will be a very good neighbor. In response to some of the concerns, yes, we do have things outside. We don't pile up pallets of hay outside. I mean, hay, to the extent whether it's pellets or compressed bales, is sold inside the store. Don't need a use permit for that. Other kinds of sales that occur inside and outside, it's not just me walking out there, opening a gate, picking it up, and taking what I want. I pay for it inside. The money exchanges hands inside. Someone from the store helps me load or agrees to deliver it to our home and that type of thing. It is very much a retail operation that has been around for many, many years, operates in many states, and is something that we're very confident will be a good neighbor, not only within this shopping center itself, because that's important too, but also to surrounding neighbors and neighborhoods, whether they exist or coming in the future. So as I said, if you have questions, we'll try to answer them. Otherwise, we request your council's approval in accordance with the recommendations that come to you from your staff and planning commission, and subject to the 8 updated stipulations that are in your staff report.
Thank you. There may be questions after I close the public hearing. So with that, I'm going to close the public hearing and ask that I read this motion to approve a use permit to allow outdoor display and a storage of merchandise for sale at the proposed Cal Ranch stores at 2075 North Pebble Creek Parkway within the Market at Estrella Falls Commercial Center, located in a mixed-use district of Goodyear Planned Regional Center planned area development subject to stipulations. Could I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Campbell and a second by Councilman Lorotano. Open for council discussion.
I have a question.
Councilman Campbell.
Thank you. Perhaps I need Joe to come back, Joe Schmidt. I apologize. I was trying to find it in my iPad package, and for some reason I'm not very successful. Is there a height limit as to what can be stored in the front?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Campbell, the restriction is that it not exceed the height of the fence, and the fence height will be 7 feet overall.
So whatever's inside stays inside, and it's not hanging out. So you wouldn't see what was in there, really.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Lorotano?
Yeah, we talked at extent about that, about this whole development and everything, and I just, is it okay if I address some of the comments that were made?
Yes, certainly.
I understand by a lot of the people who live around there who really liked Bash's'. Bash's' was a very nice store, but they're having their own financial problems. There's one up on 7th Street in Thunderbird and Moon Valley that was an AJ's owned by the Bash's' Corporation that was taken out. They're putting a Goodwill in there right now. It was a smaller store with our competitive grocery market here with Fry's and Safeways and an Albertsons, all very close. You know, I understand you loved Bash's' and it was a great store, but you're just not going to get another store in that small, condensed area. It was a very small store for grocery stores out here. I've taken the time to look at the cow ranch, you know, the products, and it's not a low-end store. It's a very high-end store. There's like $5,000 saddles, and, you know, some of this is very high-end product line. So I think when we look at what's coming here, I would ask the people who are concerned to look at it. It's not a low-end store, you know. It's not just thrown out there. It's going to be high-end, rather expensive items out there. And I think Mr. Palmatier basically summarized a lot of it. It's not going to be visible. We're going to ensure that it's not visible. We've talked to Cow Ranch and the developers, and what they're going to put in there is consistent with the basically a commercial power center, and so that's the other type of shops that are going to go in there. So it's really a good consistent use for that area, and I think we'll see a lot of people coming from other areas to shop there and get some of those items, because it is like a kind of, there's Cabela's type things, and that's a high-end store too. So I think we should be very happy we have that here.
Next. Councilman Stibb?
I thought Joe was still standing there. Sorry. No, don't sit down. Sit down. Actually, this is for Mr. Bull. You discussed the product of hay which is stored inside the building. So we're not talking about outside storage of hay bales.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. The other item of concern, which we didn't discuss last week, was a couple of the residents had issued concern about farm implements. And I have to admit, I have grown up in the suburbs my entire life. So if you poked me in the eye with a farm implement, I wouldn't necessarily know what it is. But if it's not a hand tool, I guess theoretically it's a farm implement. But when I think of farm implement, I'm thinking of a tractor or a disc, you know, something that you drag behind a tractor that, you know, discs the soil, that kind of thing, which I did not see outside of one of the local cow ranches that I visited here. What I saw was automated gates and you know, steel fencing, that kind of thing. Can you explain what some of those materials are that we're storing outside?
Sure. We do not sell tractors. You know, kind of the typical piece of farm equipment, or combines, or balers, or things like that. We do sell some pull-behind equipment that, for example, I may use to harrow an arena or disc an arena, or if I have a garden that needs to be turned over, that type of thing. But we are not a replacement for your local John Deere implement dealer and that type of thing. But we do have some pull-behind equipment. At the other store you may be talking about, some of that equipment was stored back behind in the storage area that was back behind. The materials that were out in the very front of that store, like squeeze chutes and vaccinating chutes and things like that, none of that can be in front of this store, right in front of the store, like lawnmowers or other things might be displayed at an Ace Hardware. And I don't think you have that squeeze chute kind of equipment at this store anyway, correct?
I got to figure it out.
Okay.
But it would be within one of the two displays
Right.
that we're asking for.
So
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to see large custom farmers coming here to buy their farm equipment, but you might see guys like me coming to get a new harrow to harrow up the arena.
I got that. Okay. So the other thank you for answering my question. I'm good on that. I've got a couple of comments. If I just may, while I've got the mic, or you want me to wait?
You've got the mic. I'll allow it.
The first thing is to the manager. Can we get the notice how big that went out. Several concerns about notices not going. If we don't know it off the top of our head, I'm okay with a yellow paper or something later. But I realize there's nothing around that. If you were to draw this 500 foot or 600 foot, there's nothing there. So if we notice somebody, I'd surely like to know who was noticed and how we came to that. Now, if you're not prepared, I'm okay with that. But if you're prepared, come on up.
He's prepared.
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, I don't have the documentation in hand with me, but staff report indicated that we send it to everybody within 500 feet, property owners within 500 feet, and then to the HOAs of Palm Valley, Rio Paseo, and Pebble Creek.
Mm-hmm.
So we can re-verify that for you.
Okay. So I guess, and I know I can do this because I did it a couple months ago. So let me ask, Mr. Brennan, are you in any one of those subdivisions
No.
that he just mentioned? Portales.
Yeah, he's not.
So you didn't. That's why you.
Not in it.
Yeah. So I'm assuming neither one of you are in those three that we mentioned. So I'm looking.
I'm in Portales, which is directly adjacent to, we're both in Portales, which is directly adjacent to the property.
Okay.
And that location is walking distance from me.
Got it.
Less than a mile.
Yeah. I drive it all the time. So
They're in Palm Valley Phase 8. I just don't know which Palm Valley we
which
sent
phase
it to.
we did it to.
Right.
Okay. If we can, I think for the future, make sure we're, in a situation like this where there's really no quote unquote abutting residents, make sure that we are hitting them all. I know I would greatly appreciate it, and I think our residents would like to hear that too.
Well, Madam Mayor and Councilman Stipp, that we try to, and
Yep,
the
I know it's
minimum
difficult.
requirement is 500 feet for general notice, and then for actual notice under the statute, it's only 150 feet.
Right.
So we try to extend it where we can. So
Yeah, and I know you get what I'm saying, but I think we need to make absolutely sure we are anybody who can see what we're going to do. Probably, if we're in a situation like this again in the future, we probably need to make sure that they get noticed. That's all. So, thanks, Joe. The the couple of things that came up. I had the privilege of having email correspondence with two of our 5 speakers, and I have to admit when the information first came forward, I was very concerned as well about the outside storage. What are we going to put in front? You drive down Monte Vista, and what's it going to look like, and the whole thing. But from the time that I was first notified we were going to have this, our work session, etc., I know that staff and the developer and the applicant have worked very hard to make sure that that this was going to be as visually appealing as a retail outlet can be. And I don't mean any disrespect to retail, but that's just the way it is. And not having storage directly outside the front doors, I think is a huge concession, and it goes a long way to making that visually appealing to the front of the store. It's a beautiful power center, and I think not having something parked out front of the front doors is going to continue to beautify that. I was very pleased to hear about the screening around the storage area in the front parking lot, and the additional concession that we're not going to exceed the height of that fence. That's a big deal in the front of the store. The back of the store, we would allow normally Connex boxes, the big shipping containers in retail areas, to be stored back there. And I know Target, at the height of the season a number of years ago, had a number of them parked right along McDowell. And this is actually if you're going to store something outside, this is probably the best location to have it stored in. I was becoming a little bit more comfortable with it, and then the final push for me that put this over was that all of that property around the north part of this center and across the street is all zoned multifamily. So in a short period of time, there are going to be multiple story, 2 or 3 story multifamily dwellings there that are going to block every view that we all enjoy right now across the mountains and across that area is going to be taken up by housing. And so with that in mind, with everything, just to kind of explain, having looked at this whole thing and made sure that we did as much as we absolutely could to protect both our residents and the rights of this property owner, because as Mr. Bull pointed out, it is zoned for retail. This is an exact application for this, for Bash's Leaving. It fits that. And it does not, the special use permit does not, the objections do not rise high enough for us to not approve it. Unfortunately, they just don't. So, as much as I believe things we can do to beautify our city, I think this applicant and this developer have done a great job of trying to work with us to make it happen. And for that, I'm appreciative of staff and their willingness to work with us as a city.
Wally, I'm sorry, Wally's next. Wally.
I just wanted to say that we have had this conversation in Pebble Creek for quite a while. We have one person from Pebble Creek here speaking in favor of it. We cannot see it from Pebble Creek. We're way far away from it. And when we're driving down Pebble Creek Parkway, if you're doing the speed limit, you're so busy driving, you really can't see Bash's store, or you can see the bank because it's out by the street. But I think the use, the building use by Cal Ranch is absolutely wonderful. We are a Western farming community out here. We have a lot of folks who have horses boarded, who love to go to specialty stores to get bridles and saddles and blankets, and I like to go to get boots every now and then. I'm from Texas. I love my belts, my beautiful belts and hand tool things. But I really, I feel as Councilmember Stipp does, what the applicant is asking for is very reasonable. It's wonderful that they are willing to come into a store that unfortunately has to close, and we appreciate them looking at us because we have a huge demographic to draw from, and I think we'll be very successful in the corner. I drove into the parking lot, and I parked, and I looked exactly where they were going to put the fencing area. And I stood out of my car, and I could barely see Pebble Creek Parkway. I know I'm only 5 feet tall, but I had to look up, and I could see a few cars going by. And you absolutely, the only way you're going to see that storage area is if you drive into the parking lot. And I would hope that if you're driving into the parking lot, you're coming to shop at Cal Ranch. Otherwise, you will not see it. So I appreciate all that the applicant has done for the developer as well, because you have worked so closely with the city and you've listened to council, you've listened to our residents, and we appreciate you taking the lead like this. And I just think it's a wonderful anchor for that part of the center, and I wish you well.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo.
A couple concerns I had when it first came in. First was the screening. I was kind of concerned of what was going to be sitting out there, and I appreciate you dressing that up as far as the bricking. And again, when it comes to the screening, part of the issue is my understanding, and Joe, you tell me if I'm wrong on this, if that screening goes in, it's part of code. So from a maintenance standpoint, if that becomes tattered or ratted, they've got to replace it. Is that correct? Okay, so that's not going to happen as far as the code is concerned. The other piece that I had that concerned me too was what happens, if they're not as successful at this location. And if I'm not mistaken, Joe, you also have a stipulation in there within a reasonable period of time that has to be turned back to the condition it was before it was built. So that means the parking pieces go back in, correct? Okay, all right. And again, it's already set and zoned for retail. The only thing we have to make the decision on is the use permit. They've done everything staff asked or we've asked for as far as screening it off, making it look nice into the parking lot. And I appreciate you working with the city to get that in to screen it up. I shopped at Bash's. Me and my wife tried to keep it going, but unfortunately, I know they've had a lot of problem going in there, so we weren't successful in there. I would prefer I prefer a food store there, but I also know you've tried to bring others in, and it just was not successful. For whatever reason, it just couldn't make it there. So, again, I wish the new one luck, Cal Ranch luck, at that location. But I also know there's nothing worse than having an empty 50,000 square foot, retail in a strip area or in a power center that plays off of all the other power centers in that location. And then once the big one goes, then you start seeing the other ones, pull away. So, I want to make sure that's viable. And it's my understanding with some research I've done on Cal Ranch, you will bring traffic in there. We've got oregano's coming. So they're counting on some of those, people coming in as well. I just hope we could fill in some more of those vacant areas that you have there in that power center. But again, I wish you well. Thank you.
All the council done? Well, I just want to welcome you to Goodyear. You can see how our communities are very involved on how we pursue things and how we're developing our community. So I hope you won't take any of the remarks personally. I appreciate it, and I think the council does, that our citizens come before us and speak. I do want to clarify that we have a website, and on this website tells you when the work sessions are and our meetings. And we had brought this item to council and then delayed it so that we could vet it out completely and invite the public. And we had a council meeting which we dedicated part of that to this subject matter. We had 1 or 2 people from the community show up. So as a council and as a staff, we did make a reach to the council. These work sessions are normal. That's the way government works. Our phones are available for you to call any of the councilmen, myself, anytime you want. Private meeting for a resident, we are totally open. So I just want you to know, if you're new to the city, that is available to you at any time. The other thing is, and somebody mentioned it, that entire area is going to be commercial. What you're looking at where Cal Ranch is going in is a power center. You will not get any high-end store in a power center. You'll get a store that will bring high income, high revenue, high taxation. It's going to work for the city. But in your mind, I know you're thinking about the Bloomingdale's, the private stores, all the rest. That doesn't go in a power center. They would never come in a power center. And the store you're looking at now, Cal Ranch, is going to bring a revenue and a taxation that is going to fill the rest of that shopping center, because their company, when other vendors are looking to relocate into some of those empty sections of that shopping center, when they see that reputation of Cal Ranch, they're going to come there. So even though it's in an area maybe you're not familiar with, and it's too bad, because the publicity got out at the beginning was that we're going to have chickens and people roaming and animals roaming in the parking lot with bales of hay and farm equipment, and that's unfortunate. But due to technology anymore, things go out on the internet without any confirmation. And so it's dangerous for the public, and it's dangerous for us as a council. So I really beseech you to be sure you're making the phone calls and making the appointments, and come to staff, come to council, and ask these questions. So we want you to be happy in your neighborhood. You may be new here. You may not know what the zoning has already been in place. So anyway, but Cal Ranch, we're looking forward to the opening, and we appreciate your patience. So I think we want to just say welcome.
We need to vote.
Yeah. Pardon?
We need to vote.
Oh, we need to vote. Yes. Well, now we're going to vote. Thank you for reminding me. You see, I get so carried away with things that, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, let's go on to the next subject. We will now receive the 2012-2013 Annual Audit Report completed by Henry and Horn. Larry Lang, Finance Director, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The independent auditors, Henry and Horn, CPAs, have completed their audit for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2013. And as I think all of you have heard me say at one point or another, this is, I've been involved with the audits for the city, or of the city of Goodyear since the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2004. So this is my 10th. And of those 10, this has been far and away the best, the smoothest audit that we've had, the least staff consternation, having to find things, not getting what the auditors were looking for, comments back from the auditors, and so forth. And that's at a high level. I'll go through some of the comments, but I wanted to say that up front before I make the introduction so that you know who made it happen, because it clearly wasn't me. One is Brian Hemmerly, the CPA, is an audit supervisor with Henry and Horn as kind of the lead of the staff people that was there, and Brian has joined us tonight, and we'll have a few comments after mine. And also in the audience this evening, if you both would stand up, Teresa Sims and Sheila Mills, our controller and our CFD administrator, do a lot of work to make all of this happen. They and their staffs. There's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of people just, I think, did a phenomenal job this year to get there. So my overall comments on the audit for you real briefly. First of all, the financial statements, or the CAFR as we refer to it, and that's this book. All of you have received a copy of it. I'm sure all of you have had some great reading with it, and there'll be a test on it before we leave this evening. But they show that the city of Goodyear continues to be in good financial condition. We exceed our minimum fund balance and reserve requirements for the general fund and all the other funds. Our loans, contracts, and bonds payable decreased by about $5 million from last year, and this is after taking into account the $10.5 million we borrowed this past year to acquire the property right here that we refer to as the Veneta property, and that purchase, as all of you know, basically converted lease money that we were paying in the same amount to debt service, and will be fully paid for at the end of 10 years. Probably one of the better financial moves that we made. Also in the enterprise funds, your water and wastewater funds, as well as your sanitation fund, were completely self-sufficient. They all generated net income before contributed capital and transfers, and that does include a deduction or an expense or a charge for depreciation, which allows us the opportunity for some set aside of funds for replacement and so forth. The stadium does not generate profit, as we all know, but that is not our expectation. It did meet our expectations for the year. And then my final comment is that as part of this audit, there were no management letter or internal control weakness comments that were presented to us that were of a material nature that warranted attention of the audit committee, of senior staff, or of yourselves as a city council. Finally, I also would like to thank the Audit Committee, which consists of Vice Mayor Pizzillo, Councilmember Loretano, Councilmember Stipp, and our City Manager, Brian Dahlke. They've already reviewed this and had an opportunity for some questions, but we didn't quite get enough, and so they'll be back meeting again next week for some follow-up issues of questions that they had. And things that'll help us move forward. And I thank you for your efforts in that part that help make this process work very well. With that having been said, I would like to ask Brian Hemmerly from Henry and Horn to make a few comments about the audit from the auditor's perspective. Brian.
Good evening, Mayor Lord, council members. Thank you for having me this evening to present the annual report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2013. If you do have the report handy, I just want to touch on a few items in the reports. To start off with, you had an unqualified opinion this year. What that means is you've had a clean report. A bad thing would be an adverse opinion or a disclaimer of opinion. You guys have not received that. You've had a good report this year. Your auditor's report starts on the first page immediately after the financial section divider page. And this report is, it might look a little different from prior years because of some audit clarity standards that have been issued this year that we have to follow going forward. It just breaks out a little more detail with some headers for you. For the most part, it talks about our responsibility, this management's responsibility, of course our responsibility to provide an opinion as far as the financial statements and their them being fairly materially stated. It also talks about a few other items as far as our review of your highway user revenue funds to make sure they're spent appropriately, and that was the case this year. Any other items that come to attention might be in your emphasis of matter paragraphs or other matter paragraphs, which nothing out of the ordinary this year that you wouldn't see anywhere else. And then lastly, I wanted to talk briefly about the single audit section. It's the last few pages in the report, or the CAFR. Essentially, these reports talk about our testing of the internal controls over your financial reporting and your compliance with laws and regulations and grant agreements. We also look at your single audit compliance with the Office of Management and Budget Circular A133, your federal funding essentially, and our test book of that. This year we tested your community development block grant, and we had no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with that major program this year. And you continue as a city to be a low risk auditee, which is always good. Other than that, again, clean report on all three of those reports. Any questions?
Any questions? No? Can we wait till after we, okay, there may be. Sure. All right. Okay, so can I have a motion? No, before we do this, I didn't ask about the audience. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to speak? I do not have a card before me. All right, thank you then. Okay, could I please have a motion to receive the 2012-2013 annual audit report completed by Henry and Horn for the city of Goodyear?
So moved. Second.
Oops, sorry. I heard a motion by Vice Mayor Pizzillo and a second by Councilman Stipp. Now open for council discussion. Vice Mayor?
Now go.
Rank has privilege.
Oh, thank you. We've come a long ways. I guess when, Larry, you look back on the first audit you did when you came here, a little different on this last one, right?
Yeah, what a difference 10 years makes.
Yeah, what a difference 10 years makes. Well, I appreciate the fact that the finances are good, and I also appreciate the fact on your statements, what you made as far as the unqualified statement as well. So, again, keep up the good work. I know we've come a long ways in this regard. So, and the fact that we have the audit committee that we're asking questions as we go through this process, I think helps, as makes it a little easier in the transition. So, again, thank you.
Councilman Stipp?
I don't know if you were going to do this or not, Larry, but there is a member of your staff who I think this is her last audit, sitting in the back row. Teresa is, I think, planning a retirement early next year. And I think it's been a little longer than 10 years, but maybe a little bit shorter. But it's been my pleasure to sit on the audit committee the last 2 years. And just the work that goes into this is really mind-boggling. When we sat earlier today and listened to the ERP discussion and the amount of work that goes into analyzing our city businesses, and then you think about that book is people's time, and that so the staff that Larry has and Teresa and her staff is really deserve a round of applause for making sure, and I don't mean that literally, but for making sure that we are following the rules that we're supposed to follow, that we're managing the funds the way that they're supposed to be managed, and it makes it very easy to sit up here as a council member knowing full well financially where we're at. So kudos to you and your staff, Larry. Thanks.
Councilman Osborne?
Thank you. I did want to also congratulate Larry, Brian, and Teresa, Sheila, Anna, and Terry. And I know you have more people in your finance department, but you really have done an outstanding job for us. And I was on the audit committee for 5 years, and I've seen in the last 6.5 years what our city's gone through with the recession. And you know what? We truly can hold our head up high, because many of the things that has occurred to us financially was something that was unavoidable. And you have seen us through, and I'm really proud to say that we've taken on a lot, and you know what, we've managed the storm, and it's you guys that we can thank for that. So I really appreciate it, and sorry I didn't get to sit through this year's audit, but you know what, it was time for somebody else to have that fun. and I appreciate, Brian, your audit and giving us a clean bill. That's great. Thank you.
Councilman Loretano.
Through the fun now. So I just want to say thank you. You made it very understandable and broke it down very easily, and it's really good to see what a good job you and the whole staff are doing. So thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I want to say I enjoyed it when I was on the audit committee too. I learned a lot, and you can see by rotating, it's an advantage to council. So anybody that hasn't been on it, don't be fearful. Take the position before you're off this council to have that experience. So thank you very much. All right. We're all. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just something real quick.
Last word.
Just real quick. Just Teresa, good luck. You deserve it, and great job. Thank you.
Oh, you're right. Thank you. I'm remiss in saying, Teresa, thank you. It's always nice when we have a dedicated employee and they stick with us until retirement. We really appreciate all their effort. All right, let's vote on this. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. So let's move on to 7.3. We will now consider approving the preliminary plat for the sanctuary at Cereville Village. Joe Smith to present.
Mayor and Council, as the mayor noted, this is the preliminary plat for the sanctuary at Cereville Village. The property is about 5.43 acres, and it's located roughly at the southeast corner of Lower Buckeye Parkway and South Cereville, or otherwise at the southwest corner of 161st Lane and West Lower Buckeye, within the Cereville Village development. In July of this year, the council approved Ordinance 131286, which approved an amendment to the Cereville Village PAD and changed the land use designation on that 5 acres from mixed-use commercial to residential single-family 5.0 dwelling units per acre, subject to certain stipulations. The parcel has about 5.43 gross acres, will be subdivided into 26 single-family lots and 5 tracts. The gross residential density is 4.78 dwelling units per acre, which is under the 5 that's allowed by the PAD designation on the property. Typical lot within the proposed subdivision will be between 45 to 51 feet in width with a depth of 110 feet. Minimum setbacks for each lot will be 18 in the front, 10 for side entry garage, 5 feet for the sides, and 15 for the rear. Maximum lot coverage is 50%. Maximum building height would be 30 feet or 2 stories. There'll be 13 lots, 45 feet wide, 7 lots 49 feet wide and 5 lots 50 feet wide. The development is proposing 2 small little pocket parks. Sorry. There we go. There's the landscaping plan. One is located at the north end of the subdivision adjacent to West Lower Buckeye Parkway, and the other one is in the southwest corner of the subdivision adjacent to the existing residential development to the west and south. The park areas will contain turf areas, tot lots, playground equipment, benches, barbecue grills, and shade structures as shown on the conceptual landscape plan, and that's depicted on the detail that was included in your agenda support material. Staff has reviewed it and found the preliminary plat to be consistent with the residential land use development standards and the preliminary development plans and densities approved by the Cereville Village PAD. And the one item of note is that the previous recommendation was for this development to work with the Cereville Village Homeowners Association to see if it could be annexed into the association, but after negotiations with the HOA, it was determined that it would be better not to annex in. They are cooperating and providing the access to the park through the park area here and a sewer easement that they need to flow sewer through the site. But it will exist as an independent HOA. With that, that concludes my presentation. Representative of the developer, Mr. Zacher, is here if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Would anybody in the audience like to speak? Okay. Can I please have a motion to approve preliminary plat for the sanctuary at Cereville Village, subdividing 5.43 acres into 26 single-family lots and 5 tracts located at the southwest corner of Lower Buckeye Parkway and 161st Lane within the Cereville Planned Area Development as amended and subject to stipulations.
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Loretano and a second by Councilman Campbell. Open for council discussion. Yes, Councilman Stitt.
I just got a quick question. Just a little education. How many lots and homes are we allowing in a one-way is this at the max? Is 26 that are in here in a one-way?
Mayor Lord, Councilmember Stipp, the maximum under the fire code is 30.
Oh, 30. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now 7.4 has been postponed, 7.4, 7.5. So we'll go on to 7.6. To consider execution of the First Amendment to the amended and restated development agreement for Pradera. Sarah Chilton.
Good evening. Pradera, yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd get it right.
This is an amendment to one of the development agreements we had done in for the West Goodyear, the amended and restated development agreements. This is one of the first ones we did. As this was an ongoing process, and we continued to have input from the developers that were, that had the West Goodyear properties. One of the things that you'll recall from our the amended and restated development agreements is that all of these properties are served by regional lines that they're going to, water and sewer lines that will have to be constructed. The plan is to come back to council with a cost recovery ordinance to provide for the cost sharing of these lines. But and in anticipation of the cost recovery ordinances being amended, the development agreements impose requirements for the payment of those cost recovery obligations. Normally under the cost recovery ordinance, there's no reimbursements until the lines are fully constructed and accepted by the city. However, you're going to have a bunch of developers who are all going to rely on the same lines. So you didn't want to have a situation where I started a line, but because it's not done, and you come in with your plat afterwards, and you are going to benefit from this line, that you can delay the payments. So the original agreements required payments for the cost recovery obligation at the time of final plat, which is in our cost recovery ordinance, or at the time you hook into the line, but also if the line was started at that time, you would prepay your obligation based on the maximum probable cost in an adopted cost recovery ordinance. So one of the developers came in and said, yeah, that's great if the line is already started and under construction when I come in and when Joe Blow comes in and files his final plat. But what happens if I'm not under construction? You have developer A, they are responsible for constructing the line. They recorded their final plat. That's their obligation. Developer B comes in and records a final plat in anticipation of this line being done, and then they record the final plat, then construction starts. I said, what happens then? I mean, my line is the construction is commencing. I have to front the whole bill. So what the developers were saying was, we'd like to have contractually the right to collect for lines that construction has commenced after the recordation of the first final plat, even though it's not approved yet. And this was something that these terms show up in the later agreements. So currently any of the agreements where property owners have this term, they would get the benefit of this earlier payment. These first three agreements were done before anybody anticipated this situation. So this language would mirror the language that we've included in the last 3 or 4 agreements that we've approved, that council has approved. And that's basically the only reason for this amendment.
Great, thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right. Would any of you from the audience like to speak? No? Okay. Will the city clerk please read Resolution 13-1590 by title only?
Adopt Resolution 13-1590 approving and authorizing and directing the execution of the First Amendment to the amended and restated development agreement for Pradera, providing authorization and direction to take actions and execute documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and First Amendment, and providing for an effective date.
Could I hear a motion and a second, please?
So move.
Second.
I heard a motion by Councilman Campbell and a second by Councilman Stipp. Open for council discussion.
I have just a quick question.
Yes, Councilman Campbell.
Are we going to do a First Amendment to all of those developers?
No, the 2 items that were pulled, those were the only 2 other amended and restated agreements that were approved prior to somebody coming up and saying, hey, what about this situation? Let's come up with terms to address this situation. And the reason those 2 items were pulled was that because of vacations and people being out of town, I couldn't get the signed amendments back. So we'll be bringing those 2 agreements back at a later date, those 2 amendments.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah, but all the new agreements have this language in it.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Let's go to 7.7. We will now consider approving a development agreement for Arroyo Ranch. Sarah Chilton, there you are.
There I am.
Sarah, we'll present.
Arroyo Ranch is a development that will consist of a 40-acre parcel that is currently owned by one of the Newland entities, but it is not part of Estrella Mountain Ranch, and it is currently doesn't have any capability of providing water or sewer services. And the city's position is growth pays for itself. So, if they were to come in, they had to provide the resources, the infrastructure needed to serve the development. It's not a big enough parcel to provide water and sewer on their own. So they worked with Newland, and Newland was amenable to allocating some of the capacity of the under the Northern Solution Agreement, the water resources that they developed under the Northern Solution Agreement, and then some of the capacity from the Corrugate wastewater treatment plant to serve this development. The reason this agreement is required is because under our existing agreements with Newland, all of the capacity that's generated by the improvements Newland constructs is reserved to serve Estrella Mountain Ranch. So all this agreement does is provides an allocation of water resources to serve this 40-acre parcel and an allocation of sewer capacity from Corrugate to serve this parcel. And it also provides a mechanism that the city's obligation, reimbursement obligation for the infrastructure, is reduced by the amount of impact fees we would have collected from Newland had the development occurred within Newland. And that's essentially the crux of the agreement.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
All right. Would anybody from the audience like to speak? All right. Will the city clerk please read Resolution 13-1591 by title only?
Adopt Resolution 13-1591 approving, authorizing, and directing the execution of a development agreement for Arroyo Ranch, providing authorization and direction to take actions and execute documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and the development agreement, and providing for an effective date.
Thank you. Could I have a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion by Vice Mayor Pizzillo and a second by Councilman Stipp. Open for council discussion. No council discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. Let's go to 7.8. We will now consider approving the termination of a development agreement and option to lease agreement with Goodyear Civic Center's developers. Our city manager, Brian Dalkey, to present.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. Tonight we'll be asking council to adopt a resolution that approves a mutual agreement that really takes apart, or actually what it does is it terminates the agreement that we currently have with Langford and Associates. And this really centers around two agreements that we have. It's a development agreement, and it also is also an option to lease agreement. So I won't go through all the detail. We have a very thorough staff report, and I won't certainly read the slides, but just for reference, this is the northwest corner of Yuma and Estrella Parkway, where we own 140 acres of city-owned property. And the part in question, or the part that's specific to this agreement, is actually the 40 acres. It's in the smaller red square on the bottom right of that upper rendering. We have had master plans, and in fact, Mayor, you were part of the City Center committee back in the early 2000s, and it's just had a lot of evolution over time, HDR doing the most recent master plan in 2007. And what we did is we went out nationally. We recruited, or we actually solicited a development partner to be part of our team, if you will, to potentially look at finance, certainly development, construction, design of our city center. So we secured Goodyear Civic Center developers, and their team you'll see there, headed up by Rob Langford of Langford and Associates, along with JMI Sports Carrier Johnson, Hensel Phelps. And they were great to work with throughout the time that we worked with them, and I want to give them just publicly say that they've been a great partner to date, and we've enjoyed the relationship. And what they got out of this is they had an opportunity to do two things. It was a development agreement to design and build our City Hall library, and this was going to be the home of our Performing Arts Center as well as Multigen, but it gave them an option to lease about 9 acres of land, of which they could take down in 5 different phases and build roughly 1 million square feet of private development, truly going to be our city center hub. And the agreement was actually approved by council in October of 2008. And the agreement provisions, I just went through that. We were close. We actually had a lot of momentum on this. And what they did is they actually did design construction documents for City Hall and also a library, plus the site infrastructure, roads, water lines, sewer lines, etc. And what they had to do that is when we entered into a development agreement, they had a $500,000 contribution. When we entered into the design phase, they had an additional $500,000 that they were obligated as part of the agreements to provide to us, and this would get them the option to lease. And the final $500,000, which would take it up to that $1.5 million number that you see up there, that was going to be, at the time we did, a guaranteed maximum price for actually going forward with the construction. But we had a provision in there. We had a provision, if we did not go forward, we could delay it for 3 years, 36 months for phase one. They, as part of their opportunities, option to lease, had 16 years to actually exercise their takedown of 5 parcels to build, again, upwards of 1 million square feet of office retail. Could be multi-density condos and that type of thing. It was a long-term lease. We were married almost forever. 55 years for the first, would have been for the first lease agreements, and extending 10 years with 4 options thereafter for an additional 40 years. So would have been a 95-year agreement with Langford. So our budget, we had $67 million to build our city hall, to build our library, and the site infrastructure. And what happened as part of this is the CDs that you'll see up on the screen, that's the construction documents. When those are at 100%, we're building. So what they did is they actually completed 82% on the city hall. Construction documents and library site infrastructure, you'll see at 95%. So ostensibly, we were very close, very, very close to going forward. But what we looked at is we determined when you go forward, when you pull the trigger, we did not feel we could go out and sell bonds because we had voter authority for it for $55 million. Problem is we had trouble paying them back, and bondholders do not like that. A little bit of humor late in the evening, I know. Thank you.
Laughing.
Yeah, I see that.
Little.
But it is. But what we did is we intentionally waited. I mean, I remember we had a presentation for council in February that we were going forward with this project. But we intentionally waited till we got the property tax valuation estimates coming in from the tax assessor. We had $1 billion in assessed valuation as a city at that time. We have since seen a decline to under $600 million. What that does is the bonds that were going to be sold for this project, $55 million worth of bonds, we would have been using secondary property tax to pay that back. Had we done that and values plummeted like they have, we would have property tax rates well into the $2 range if we would have gone forward with this project. So council, and when we looked at the financial analysis, we actually did exercise that 36-month delay, and that delay was exercised in May of 2010. So the termination agreement, it's amicable, it's mutually agreeable by both parties. Again, Langford and their team, they've been patient. They wanted to build this. We started working with them in 2008, and knowing that we're looking out there to potentially 2019 to 2023 to be able to go forward with this, they decided it was time, and we totally agreed. And I do want to give kudos to council at that time to make that delay happen, because we could have gone forward. We could have gone interest only on that bond financing. We could have, if we really, if that was the will of council. Fiscally prudent that we did not. We also think it's fiscally prudent to get out of this agreement right now, too, because council has a policy that we will not go out and sell bonds if we exceed $1.60 per 100 assessed valuation as far as our tax rate, and we are over that right now, so therefore it would be outside of council policy. What the provisions of the agreement have is when we exercise the 3-year delay provision, that was a point where we would return $500,000. If you remember, we had $1 million total at this point before we exercised the delay. $500,000 at development agreement, $500,000 at design. The remaining $500,000 was never given to us because we didn't go forward with construction. When we exercise a 3-year delay, we return $500,000. This is the last remaining amount. So as we terminate this agreement, they will get that returned to them. Very important to point out that we had these funds set aside. We never touched them. They were set aside separately for this project. So it's not having to hit another account, if you will, to do the reimbursements. And the other thing is, part of this, we have ownership of all the documents. So we have rights to use those. So that is for the construction documents that we have in hand. So we certainly have the opportunity to use those when we do go forward, not if, but when. It also, though, allows us to kind of step back and see, do we have the same ideas for City Center as we did before? So there are some things that we'll be looking at down the road. Do we want to approach it the same way? Do we want to have development partners? But that's for another day. So I already got into this a little bit. The bonding capacity, we think that we'll have an ability with property tax values, valuations going up, as well as new developments coming into the community. So we do anticipate that we'll be at that point. We'll also look at every year when we go through the budget process, we'll have an opportunity to look at when might this be viable for council consideration to put it into the capital improvement plan. One of the things, and I did not point out, the amount of dollars that we've actually expended to date. Hang on one second. I think I blew right past that slide, but it's about $4.2 million to date, and that does. And with that, we got the construction documents to the point where they are. That has been all development fees that we've used at this point. We did not sell bonds, so there's nothing to do with any of the bond financing that would have been part of the $67 million project. And the general fund dollars that were allocated for this project, we repurpose those as well. So it is the, to date, it's been the development fees that we've expensed so far on the City Hall, construction documents, design, and the library. So with that, our recommendation to council is go ahead and adopt the resolution that terminates this agreement, and it would be effective. Effectively, it would return the $500,000 remaining dollars to Langford.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Mayor.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak? Will the city clerk please read Resolution 13-1586 by title only?
Adopt Resolution 13-1586 approving the mutual termination of development agreement and option to lease agreement with Goodyear Civic Center Developers, LLC.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
I'm not sure who made that. Councilman Holman made the motion, and second was Sherry Loretano.
Oh, no, Joanne.
Down this. Joanne, you made that? Oh, all right. Joanne Osborne made the second. Open for council discussion.
Mayor?
Councilman Osborne?
I thank you, Brian. I appreciate having this in front of us. You know, it is a bummer that we hit this point, but we did make the correct correct process 3 years ago. I think we did everything we could to even scale back the project, scaled it down so that we could do something, and it just wasn't in the cards. And we did make the right decision. And you know, I know we're sad that we're at this point, but you know what? That's how it is. And in the future, we will see that city center at some point. But we did. My goodness, if we had gone forward, we would have been in a world of hurt right now. So I appreciate that we're here, and we'll see a brighter day in the future.
Vice Mayor?
No, I appreciate all the prior, review on this issue, and I agree with Councilmember Osborne that, unfortunately, it was the right decision at the time. We look back now, and if we would have moved forward, we have a different financial condition we have now. So good decision, and I think it's about time, to open this up. So again, thank you.
Any other comments? Well, I'll just say, as the city center chairman, and was on this committee long before I became a council member and a mayor, it was a sad day for me to have to vote against this and to pull the plug on the development. But I know that it will be back someday. I'm not sure it will be in my term or in this council's term, but we don't know. Who knows with the economy? You don't have crystal balls, and so we don't know if it will increase enough to start earlier than what the date we were anticipating at this time. But I appreciate the presentation, and so let's get on with this. Where am I? And could the city clerk please read?
We did that.
We did that. Thank you. I'm very tired. Okay, so now we're had motions, and now we're going to have council discussion. So let's do roll call vote.
Councilmember Homan.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Pizzolo.
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne.
Aye.
Councilmember Loretano.
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp.
Aye.
Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Okay, now's the time for council. Do you have any comments or accommodations, or want to talk about what you've done this week? Councilman Holman.
I'm so sorry.
We've been up here all night, that's why.
Oh, well, I honestly just wanted to say there's been so many wonderful opportunities to participate in holiday and very generous events to make the holidays better for other people. And I'm not going to list them. I shared many of those with my council members. But we have a great community, and it was never demonstrated more clearly than the last week. And I want to wish everybody here a very happy holiday and safe one.
Councilman Loretano?
And we did all attend several of the same events, especially this weekend. But I do want to thank the chief and your whole staff and all your L's for the Shop with the Cop. I have to say that was my favorite event. And I thank you guys for doing that, and I'm sure the kids loved it. So just tell everyone thank you. You hear about all the bad things all the time in the paper and everything, and when you see that, and you saw the kids and the officers, and so thank you. And then the other thing, I want to thank Nathan and everyone at the ballpark for the home plate at the holidays. It was spectacular, and the snow didn't melt because it was cold enough, and it was just great. So thank you, and we have a great city, and thank you, Brian, and just let all the staff know.
Councilman Campbell?
Well, I just wanted to report on the Shop with a Cop. We had 34 children that the officers took shopping, and it was a wonderful event. I especially want to thank the Pebble Creek Home Tour Committee who raised all the funds for it. I want to thank Walmart and Chick-fil-A for their support and help making it such a wonderful event. I also want to report that this morning I accompanied the Fill-A-Need Committee as well as Lieutenant Jimmy Rodriguez to the Mobile Elementary School, where we delivered Christmas gifts to all 25 students of the school. Those gifts were purchased by the Pebble Creek Lady Niners Golf Club that adopt these children, and every year we've done this for the past 7 years, and we had a wonderful time. Santa Claus went down with us and spent time with each of the children, and it was just wonderful. We had Goodyear Fire with us as well, and it was just a really happy day for the children.
Councilman Osborne?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things, and yes, this really is the time of year that I think we all just are happy and we feel good and we see so much good that people are doing. And I think the council members and the support that I've had from everyone in the city with our Homeless Youth Connection, we had our first Empowering Youth Breakfast, and that was about the working poor tax credit, and it was very well received, and we had a good turnout. I also, it was funny, Saturday, I was going to work, and our parking lot was full, and I thought, wow, I don't think they're in my store, but this was exciting. Well, it was Palm Valley Church taking up my parking lot, and it was because they were out feeding 4,000 people. And I just, those kinds of things are so outstanding. And Church on Cotton Lane brought me 102 shoe boxes filled with necessities for the homeless, all wrapped up for me to deliver to a shelter. And I thought that was exciting. And Home Plate for the holidays was wonderful. Georgia and I and Wally had attended GPEC's Christmas party, and I have to tell you, I was getting great little compliments on our very own Sherry Wakefield Signs, and what a wonderful economic development person she is. And lastly, one of the highlights for myself and my family was actually Saturday at the opening of the World War II memorial, and I was there by myself, but you know what? I knew that all my family and friends were there with me, and that was a very special time in my life.
Any other comments? Yes, Councilman Stipp.
I'm going to be very brief. The in our last week's packet update of stuff that we did was an update on the Goodyear Volunteer Firefighters Trust meeting that I chaired on last week. Just to kind of give everybody just a real quick overview of that is back in the day when we had volunteers, they were able to enroll in this retirement plan, if you will, as a way to encourage volunteerism in the communities, and this goes way back in the day. Well, there were a few that have hung on, and I think we're at 6, if I remember that number correctly, that are continuing to hang on until they go through that. Well, as the fund has changed and as the market has changed, it necessitated us moving to a different provider of those funds. So that you saw that in the update that we moved from Company A to Company B, and that was really precipitated on the fact that our fund manager felt we could actually get even better returns using a different company. So if it never comes up, that group meets once a year to have an annual meeting and make sure everyone's still alive, and then we adjourn and we go on from there. But we actually had some business this year, and well, that's what it is. But we actually had a meeting with some substance to it, and I thought I'd give you a little follow up on that based solely on the report that we got this week.
Do anybody else? I'll just quickly make a couple of comments. General Rand asked me to say once more thank you to the community of Goodyear for all the support that they, along with the entire West Valley, gave for the F-35. He was here visiting, and they had a reception for him out at the club, and so I said I would definitely tell you all a great big thank you. And I just want to point out a couple of things. When people talk about the West Valley, and our neighboring cities, it is really important. And when you think this week, I'll give you just kind of a general view, but I went to an anniversary concert celebration at St. Thomas Aquinas Church. It's been 10 years. And that particular church was built by the West Valley community, because it wasn't built just by Litchfield, it was built by all of the communities that are contributing to that. The Pebble Creek Christmas concert is a great attribute to the community. It's open to the public. Again, it just puts you in the holiday spirit. And then the Litchfield Park Christmas parade, we all were participating in that, and it's nice to see that all the cities come together and go to each other's parades, and that was very, very nice. And then, of course, Home Plate for the holidays was spectacular, along with Shop with a Cop. So that just shows you how active our community is, and especially during the holiday times, very special. So let's go on, and I'll tell you. The next is our city manager. Do you have anything for us, Brian?
Unfortunately, I do. A couple of things. I have some follow-up and then a couple of announcements. One is staff will be following up on the potential for council and or administrative actions affecting the land areas around the Phoenix Goodyear Airport, just to ensure that we remain compatible. So we'll be looking at that further, and we'll keep council up to date, and certainly we'll be in front of you as needed. We'll also be looking at just verification of the notifications for what went out with the Cal Ranch notifications. We just will confirm that, and we'll send that to you via email. I do need clarification because one of the things we do have the requirements that were gone through tonight. 150 feet is a state statute. We generally go 500 feet generally. So question back to Councilmember Stipp. I wasn't quite sure what that follow-up item was.
Just the kind of an internal procedure or something that if we have a situation very similar to and we talked about Cal Ranch tonight, about Cal Ranch, the 150 the 500 feet produces nothing, so there's technically no neighbors to notify, that we look at what other residential that are closest then, and what does that notification process look like? Is it just to can we do it just to the HOA without hitting the 1,000 homes that live there? Or is just something that, and I don't know how many of these we've got that even have residential nearby. So I would look for staff to provide some educated, we think within a eyesight or quarter mile or whatever you guys think, and just some sort of what can we do to make sure that residents don't come before us going, well, this is what we heard, at the 11th hour. Because if there had been substantial concerns, it could have delayed this for more information, and it would have been unfair to staff, to the developer, to the applicant, et cetera. So just let's look at that and see what does that look like.
Yep, understood. Work with development services, but understand the comment.
But I think in one of these cases, now, in all fairness to staff, they don't have a homeowners association, and so
right.
We can only go so far. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'm not looking for let's, anybody who drives by it gets a notification, but just if they can see it, it may be, look, there's no HOA, we can't notify everybody, and that may be the answer, but at least we've looked.
Okay, all right.
Yes, that helps on the clarification. Mayor and Council, I do have some, that was the follow-up items. I do have a couple of announcements. One is if I could get him to stand up, Mr. Hector Tapia, who's our Development Services Deputy Director. And Hector comes to us most recently from Nogales. Worked many years in Tempe, also worked in Mesa. So excited to have you on board. So thank you. A couple other announcements, and I'll be brief on these. Spring training tickets are on sale this Saturday. So that's season ticket packages are available now, but this coming Saturday they go for single ticket games. Go to the box office between 10 and 2 and pick up your tickets. Reds and Indians play their first game Wednesday, February 26th, which is my dad's birthday. Just saying, home plate for the holidays. Many of you were there. It was our 11th year. And over 11 years, we've had over 60,000 people attend what was Holly Jolly and then became home plate. About 6,400 this year. We were asked a question earlier, about the same as what we had last year. We did have a slight delay in arriving as Santa. I got to hear some singing while the mayor and council were waiting patiently. But it was very enjoyable. 400 children were all nice. So none of them got lumps of coal. 40 tons of snow. And it was just a good event. So, you already gave kudos to Nathan, but just wanted to point out some of the specifics. And the last thing, I want to keep in good graces with our police chief. So we actually, and I'm excited to go through this, council had an opportunity to do it. I, unfortunately, was teaching college on Saturday, so I missed it. But as was pointed out, 34 children were part of the Shop with the Cop. Biggest and most successful to date. Over 50 police department personnel joined the mayor and council volunteers, sponsors old Nick himself. What began here at the council chambers, children were paired up with their officer, a visit with Santa, and then they got their gift cards for Walmart. But it must have been amazing to see the procession of more than 40 police department vehicles with the lights and the sirens going. And those of you that were part of that, I just can't even imagine what thrill that was for the children. But on the way to Walmart, they passed they drove Celebration Way past CTCA, where participants waved and spread the holiday cheer to the patients and staff at the hospital. So really engage them as well. And then their experience at Walmart as the employees awaited the kids' arrival. So, and then the kids got what they wanted out of it. They had toys. It's a special tradition that our police department has done over the years. And we actually, if you look behind you or on your screen, we actually have about a 2-minute display of various photos from the event on Saturday.
That's a lot of policemen in one room. You can really see it's meaningful to the children. It really was.
That's the home tour committee. I was asked what was going on in the city with all the cops going around. But there it is.
There were hidden steps out.
Sorry, I missed it. Music. Should we sing?
That's just great.
Yeah, so thank you. Congratulations, please.
I only have one question. Is there any way that we can get some of those personal pictures sent to those children? Okay, that would be great, because I'm sure they would love to have that as memories. Okay, the next work session will be on December 16th at 5 p.m., and that will be the last work session of the year. And so our first work session in the new year will be on the 6th of January at 5 p.m., and our regular meeting will be on the 13th of January at 4:30 at the work session with meeting following. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.